This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN SportsWrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG, Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working!
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
It's like a loot machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids' apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results. Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds. You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
But my beats, they are hard.
are. It's your favorite two guys from the Black College Sports Network, BCSN SportsWrap. I'm Brian Fulford. That's AD Drew, and it's good to be with you on a Friday afternoon. Some people call it Black Friday. Some people just call it the day after Thanksgiving. Other people call it the first of a good holiday weekend. So whatever day you call it, it's good to be on with you. There is football, some HBCU football going on. And Drew just couldn't help himself. He's like, B, we got to do a show. We got to do a show. I'm like, Drew, I'm chilling. I'm relaxing. I'm ready to go shopping. Now we got to do a show. So here we are.
Man, I'm just trying to save you some money, man. That's all, because anything that you buy today, you will regret at the end of December.
Amen. You're sure enough right about that.
And thing number two, isn't it good that something called black is associated with something good? Black Friday is associated with a good, a good thing. You got what was it, Black Monday when the stock market crashed, and you got black this and black that. Well, damn it, the word black is associated with something good on this occasion.
Well, it's funny you say that because, I don't know if that's where the history or the phrase terminology came from out of anything good. So,
I know it's not, but it's just it's just one of those things, damn it, we got something that starts off with the word black that's associated with something good for a change.
All right. Very good.
Don't even though it's been like that forever.
Yeah, don't tell anybody the history of the phrase, and then you'll continue to feel good about it. So that's there you go. Hey, so look, today's show, we've got to talk about some upcoming games. Benedict College hosting their first playoff game, the 11-0 unbeaten number one team in the region, I guess the southern region of the Division II playoffs, hosting a game this upcoming Saturday against Wingate University, the team that defeated Virginia Union last week. And then we'll also talk about the Bayou Classic, the 49th edition of the Bayou Classic in its form at New Orleans, but I believe it's something like the 74th or 75th meeting between Southern and Grambling. So we'll talk about that as well. And but let's get into it and talk about a game that took place last night, or yesterday afternoon rather, on Turkey Day. It was the annual, the 98th Turkey Day Classic. I just can't even imagine a particular game that has been played 98 times. I mean, older than our parents and combined, and even going into our grandparents' era. So, I mean, there's just the history of this game being played, hosted by Alabama State. Traditionally, Alabama State and Tuskegee. But this year it's UAPB.
70, I believe, almost 80 times that Tuskegee and Alabama State have played in this particular matchup.
Right. Well, this year it's UAPB. That's actually, and it's an actual SWAC contest. So the final SWAC regular season game for both schools. And I don't think it went to script for Alabama State. Did not go to script for Alabama State, as them coming up. Now, they had a bye week, and this was a bye week coming off the heels of the Florida A&M game that was there in Montgomery, a game that they had opportunities to win. I don't know if they definitely weren't favored coming into the ball game, and they were catching a FAMU team that had just played Southern, had Bethune-Cookman a week ahead, and they didn't play their best. I mean, Florida A&M probably did as much as any one team could do to help another team win a ball game, but Alabama State wasn't able to take advantage of it, and so they had a chance to work on all of that, correct all of that, hopefully, and play this contest against UAPB. And Drew, the game script from the beginning, from the first quarter, first half, it did not go Alabama State's way.
No, it did not. That's turnovers. I believe it started off with Santo Dunn back to receive a punt. He muffed a punt. UAPB was able to pick up that buff punt and then score on that ensuing drive. Then I believe there was an interception later on in the first half that led to a UAPB touchdown. Oh, got a little tongue tied right there for a moment, my brother. But yeah, it just was, despite the fact that Alabama State dominated the game offensively, but there was one that I recall, may have been even two, and I'm trying to think of this off the top of my head, fourth downs, where Alabama State was too close to punt, too far for a field goal, and those drives ended up with the turnover on downs.
Yeah, Alabama State had two particular drives that went turnover on downs in the second quarter. A 10-play, 45-yard drive was a turnover at the UAPB 30. So, at the UAPB 30, if you're talking a field goal kicker, that's probably a 47-yard field goal.
It's close to 50.
If
you're 30, that's 48. That's 47, 48. Yes, correct.
Yeah. And then the other one was in the third quarter. Where really they didn't really move the ball. I think this was following, a pair of touchdowns to actually in which, Alabama State had gotten down in this ball game 13-0. They actually scored a pair of touchdowns in the third quarter. And then in the third quarter, they were really just trying to, I think, keep the momentum going. Ended up turning it over on downs on their own 38-yard line. And then on the, fortunately it didn't cost them, but 4 turnovers in the course of the ball game for Alabama State led to 2 touchdowns. The first one happened in the first quarter where they fumbled on the first play of the drive on their own 16-yard line. And let me see here. I had that all set up here on the drive chart here. That fumble led to a touchdown by UAPB on 3 plays later. There was also a interception. Nope. Hold on. Let me go back here. There was an Alabama State fumble in the third quarter on their own 39-yard line, which only turned into a field goal attempt by UAPB. No, I got that backwards. I'm sorry. That was in the fourth quarter where Alabama State fumbled, and then that led to the game-winning touchdown, or what would turn into the game-winning touchdown, 9 plays, 72 yards. So 2 turnovers led to 14 points, including a game winner, and it just comes to bite you. And despite good numbers for Alabama State in the ball game, I mean, they won on total first downs. They outrushed UAPB 212 to 181. They outpassed them 285 to 152. They outgained them nearly 500 yards of total offense, 497 to 333. I mean, you do everything you're supposed to do to win a ball game, but you don't. And that's a kicker. And
yeah, I was gonna say down the stretch, Alabama State did not play like they had a 1-point lead, Brian. They played like they were up by 2 scores or more. And usually with a 1-point lead, you still want to remain aggressive. You want to put up another touchdown, at minimum another field goal, which they missed. But both teams missed field goals in the second half, with opportunities to shift the course of the game. But trying to do, and I believe it was like a shovel pass or something like that, which caused another turnover in the fourth quarter, which UAP was able to come back on and score, which basically was the ball game.
Mm-hmm. Defensively, some of the interesting stats that I come across here as I just go through the box score. Both teams had a defensive player record 17 tackles. I mean, literally, both teams did. For
First of all, that's a good day for any player defensively in the game. But most players, that's a 2 to 3 game set, 17 tackles. But to have two people on two different teams record that, obviously somebody's schemes wasn't working offensively.
Well, Alabama State, it was Colton Adams who had 17 total tackles. 10 of them were solo, 4 tackles for loss. He forced a fumble, had 4 quarterback hurries. For UAPB, it was Rico Dozier, 17 total tackles. 12 of them were solo, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. And then UAPB also had a defender that had 15 tackles. That was Yule Jr., Grand Yule Jr. had 15 total tackles. Hold on, let me make sure I get full name in there right, because I know sometimes when you look at the stats, you only get you only get the half names here. So I want to see if I can make sure to pick up his full name, and I'll do that here in a second when I turn it over to you. But he had 2 tackles for loss and 2 pass breakups for UAPB. In terms of offensively, Kayvon Britton, 28 carries for UAPB, 160 yards, 3 scores. Again, UAPB only had about 330-something yards of total offense. 160 came on the ground by Britton. Skylar Perry came back. He was 14 of 29, 113 yards through the 1 interception. And that, is probably, but I would say he probably ended his playing career with a win. For Alabama State, Ja'Cory Merritt, 17 carries, 91 net yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Demetrius Davis, D. Davis, 18 of 30, 272 yards, 1 interception. He was sacked 4 times on the day. How do you evaluate the end of the season for Alabama State, Drew? Because maybe heading into the Florida A&M game, it's a disappointing 2 losses for Alabama State. But how do you evaluate their season under first-year head coach Eddie Robinson Jr.?
I think for Alabama State people, you have to be pleased with the turnaround that Coach Eddie Robinson was able to bring to Alabama State. Yes, the last 2 games were disappointing for ASU, but given the expectations back in June, July, August, people were afraid because he had 0 coaching experience. Not high school, not college. He had 0 coaching experience. What he was going to be able to do. I think he has shown that he can coach at this level. He loves his alma mater. There's never been a doubt about that. Now, what they have to do, Alabama State has to figure out how to finish games going into next season. Is that players who can, closers. They had a good trio of running backs. I know Santo Dunn is through. I'm not sure about the other 2 running backs if they will have another year of eligibility remaining. But Alabama State will run the ball, play defense. That's their formula. If that's going to be their formula, now they need to go into the offseason and pick up some pieces that will allow them to do that at a greater level. D. Davis, I believe he was injured at certain points in time during the season. So D. Davis is able to stay healthy. What would that mean for Alabama State? Are they using all of D. Davis's talent? And I'm not saying that his talents aren't that great, but maybe they didn't have the weapons to match his talent, because Alabama State did not pass the ball a lot. And D. Davis was one of the best dual threat quarterbacks coming into college. But we only saw one of those threats, and that was the threat on his feet a lot. We didn't see a lot of run. And Keyshawn Johnson, oh my God. More targets for Keyshawn Johnson, but if he's the only receiver that you have, it's kind of easy to double and triple him. So then we're going to have to get some help for Keyshawn Johnson. An interesting fact, Brian. The last 2 SWAC opponents to play Alabama State on Turkey Day have won. Prairie won 20-17 in 2019. That was pre-pandemic. And of course, yesterday UAPB won. And take it back to 2018, Mississippi Valley almost pulled off the upset over Alabama State as that game went into overtime. So getting these SWAC teams in here, I guess these SWAC teams are pissed off because they got to stay on campus this week and play this doggone game. So, maybe that's the formula for those SWAC teams, because when they do not play Tuskegee, and they don't have a good record against Tuskegee in this classic, but when they play SWAC opponents, it has not been good.
As it relates for UAPB, they closed their season with a win. Obviously, this is a team that only really has, as I look at their roster, they have 11 seniors and grad students, 11. So the cupboard is full. Now, with respect, here when I say the cupboard is full, the cupboard is relatively full for UAPB. Whoever is going to come in and get that job, obviously Don Treadwell, the interim head coach, they'll have a full search or go through the process of trying to find out who will be the new head coach. Maybe it's Don Treadwell, maybe it's somebody else. But not only are you losing a future NFL offensive lineman by many people's estimations, that's Mark Evans II, but you're also going to lose Skylar Perry, who has exhausted 5 years in the program. He's been playing ever since he was a freshman. His total numbers, Drew, over 44 games played. That's including the COVID year of 2020, or the COVID spring of 2020, where he led UAPB to the SWAC championship game. He's thrown for 6,926 yards, 629 completions, 41 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, a career 55% passer completion percentage, an average of 157.4 per game for Skylar Perry. If you include some running stats, he in his career just finished under 1,000 yards rushing in his career at 984 with 8 touchdowns. And so Skylar Perry will be missed. That will be the big shoe to replace at UAPB. And it's very rare this day, Drew, that you have a 4-year guy or a 5-year guy, a guy who's been synonymous with your program since he was a freshman. He's been through 2 head coaches, not an interim head coach, so 3 head coaches. I think it'll be real interesting to see how UAPB rolls forward. Any thoughts on UAPB there before we get ready to take a quick break?
No, it's UAPB 2 years removed from the SWAC championship game, and the question is, was that a one-off, or is that something that they can actually go back and rebuild at UAPB? One other thing, Brian, I'm looking at the history of the Turkey Day Classic.
Mm-hmm.
3 of the 4 times that Alabama State has played a SWAC opponent in the Turkey Day Classic, they have lost in the history of the Turkey Day Classic.
All right.
And no team not named Tuskegee or a SWAC opponent has ever beaten Alabama State in the Turkey Day Classic.
Never.
No one ever. Prairie View has 1 victory. UAPB has a victory. Mississippi Valley has a victory back in the 70s. Every other loss in the Turkey Day Classic has occurred to Tuskegee.
14,000 people is the listed attendance. So congrats to all those folks who showed up. In terms of the future scheduling of this game, real quick, Drew, I mean, does it look like Tuskegee will come back?
Tuskegee comes back in 23. I believe it's a 3-year deal. Don't quote me on the number of years, but I know they will be back in 23 and at least 24, I do believe. Okay. And which actually makes me kind of wonder about it, because with the tradition of Tuskegee is really they've got back to the point where they could have been in the playoffs this year. That's always been that debate with that particular game. Does Tuskegee take the money and play on Turkey Day, or do they go to the playoffs? That's a decision that Coach Rufford and Dr. Morris will ultimately have to decide long term for Tuskegee. But for the next couple of years, they're going to take the money.
Take the money, baby. Take the money. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Take the money.
Hey,
take the money and run.
Yeah, take the money and run, as the song says. All right, we'll come back in just a moment, talk about Benedict's upcoming game in Columbia, South Carolina against Wingate. We'll be back in just a second. You're watching the BCSN Sports Wrap. This is the BCSN Pod Zone, your place for the news, views, and conversations about all things related to HBCU athletics. Here are the BCSN Sports Wrap, Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, Knights of the Round Table, the pregame show, the Carlos Brown Show, the ONG, Strike Zone, and more in one place. We are changing the way you consume HBCU sports, one broadcast at a time.
Maureen is saving big holiday shopping at Amazon, so now she's free to become Maureen the Merrier. Food is her love language, and she really loves her grandson. Like, really loves.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
You see, Head & Shoulders has scalp shield technology, protects against flakes, even between washes. It's never not working.
Kind of like us. Number 15?
Never not working!
I don't like this one.
Me neither.
Let's get out of here.
Head & Shoulders scalp shield, never not working.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Bryan and AD here. I want to give a shout out to our people in the YouTube chats. Mary305, Edwin Moore, Tamara T, David Garner, Imperial Nubia, Spence Matthews, Israel, Kerry. And let's see who else is in there. DLOB dropping in as well. Maybe some other folks there on Facebook. Thank you guys for dropping in some great comments. Tuskegee seems to be the popular choice for some of you guys there in the chat room. So that'll be interesting to see that one comes back. I don't know if whose comment? I saw someone, DLOB said, I know UAPB had a bad season, but they almost beat Alcorn, Texas Southern, and Alabama A&M. Couple of plays in those games. You could add FAMU to that as well, and they could have won 3 or 4 SWAC games. Exactly. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. And at the end of the day, you end up losing. Shout out Christopher Dukes as well. See you in there. Thank you for joining in. Hey, so there's this playoff game happening over in Columbia, South Carolina, involving Benedict College. We had a bye week, undefeated, 11-0. The new season starts. You can we can get rid of that 11-0. We're not going to talk about it anymore because other than them being a the region #1 seed and mentioning it there, but now it's the second season, and it's all uncharted territory for Benedict. And now you take on a Wingate team that won the at-large bid from out of their conference, the SAC, and of course, very well known. The SAC, the conference had some choice words regarding
which we discussed last week.
Yeah, regarding their teams that went in. So here we are now. Here we are. It's game time. Wingate knocked off Virginia Union, who they basically took advantage of, 2 pick sixes. So they just took advantage of mistakes by Union, jumped out to a big 22-0 lead. And, by then it was over. But Wingate, we're looking at two of the best. I don't know, Drew, is there any potential anywhere down the line in the playoffs that we will see a matchup of 2 top 5 defenses in Division II?
Outside of this one, I did not research. I did not research it that far to see if we would see two defenses like that, and or on the flip side, 2 top 5 offenses either. I did not do the research. I was focused on this particular game when I was doing my research.
Yeah, well, the one interesting fact is defense travels. And so it'll be interesting in this upcoming matchup how defense travels. Wingate will have to travel to Columbia, South Carolina for this one. Drew, of course, wrote a great article piece. D2football.com is where you can find it. So a lot of the stuff we talk about here in this segment is coming right out of that. So Drew, let's go to let's just start, and we don't want to give too much away for people can go read the article, but let's go to what is the first thing that pops out, or the first thing that has to be handled by Benedict when you look at this matchup against Wingate?
Benedict's got to establish their running game. They have got to establish their running game. Benedict is running for almost 172 yards per game, whereas Wingate has the #1 defense against the run, giving up only 70 yards per game. So that is the first thing that Benedict will have to do is establish the running game. Check that. Wingate is 6th in yards allowed, rushing yards allowed. So just outside the top 5. So that's going to be it. And they've got Benedict has 3 backs who can tote the rock, in addition to quarterback Eric Phoenix, who's a dual threat. So that's going to be essential in doing that and controlling the clock. It's not that Wingate's offense is a high-powered offense where you need to control the clock, but you want your defense to get as much rest as possible so that defense will be in a better position to dominate as a top 5 defense also.
I do agree. I think that's an interesting event. Wingate will come into the game with a pair of backs who have ran about 550 a game, if I'm not mistaken. I know they have one back that runs about 550. Maybe the other one's not so much, but it's their main running back, and they've got a strong quarterback who comes into the game. But I look at this, and I'm kind of interested to see. I think everyone goes to the Eric Phoenix card this year and kind of say, what is Eric Phoenix going to provide? And I think we're used to seeing Eric Phoenix be a runner in previous years, but actually, if I'm not mistaken, the stats don't show that this year. I don't think he's running nearly as much, and I guess I should say for the production as he has in previous years, last year, for example. But that speaks to what the offense is doing around him. And I think Phoenix, the advantage I think offensively that Benedict has big receivers. And yes, we have firsthand witness
6'4", 6'5".
Yeah, and a couple of tight ends that are big too. So they're not just small, quick guys. I mean, they are big receivers, and so when we talk
They've
about
got D1. They got D1 receivers. Just say it, Brian. They've got D1 size.
they got D1 size on the receiving. So that'll be an interesting match to see how Wingate deals with that. But up front, it's going to be fascinating to watch because, like you said, Wingate is top 5 in several categories defensively. Drew, you pointed those out. What are those stats that they rank top 5 in Division II?
Before I get to that, those two backs that you were talking about are Caitlin Clark with 561 yards and Alexander Wilson with 490 yards rushing on the season. And the quarterback that you were referring to is Shaw Crocker, who is 173 of 309 with
who led the conference in passing touchdowns. Led the SAC in passing touchdowns with 22.
11 INTs, though. 11 INTs, 55, 56%. 56% completion percentage, just over 2,000 yards, 2164 to be exact. But those stats, Wingate, these are just the stats that they're number 1 in the nation in, Brian, that I'm supposed to give you. We can go through the rest of the top 10 stats in a moment. Yards allowed per game at 215. Third down conversions allowed, 21.8%. Red zone defense, 55.6%. Tackles for loss, 10.5 per game. And points allowed, 10.58 points allowed per game. That's just where they rank number 1 at, Brian. Let me know when you're ready for me to give you the rest of the top 10 stats.
Oh, fire away.
Okay. Number 2 in sacks per game at 4.33. Number 6 in the following categories. Defensive touchdowns scored, 4, and we saw 2 of those last week against Virginia Union. Rushing yards allowed, 69.1. Defensive passing efficiency, 94.5. And first downs allowed, 138 first downs allowed for the season. 7th in passing yards allowed, 46.1. In passes intercepted with 16. Throw in the fact that they are 5th in net punting at 40.69 yards per punt. So that just gives you a little bit of what Wingate does defensively on a national level. They have allowed 14 or fewer points in 8 of the 12 games that they have played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I go back. I want to go back to for a second and sort of correct myself a little bit with Phoenix, and I don't want anyone to think I'm disparaging Eric Phoenix and his rushing because statistically the numbers are better than previous year, and I guess maybe what is throwing me off a bit, Drew, is that there are games where he has rushed, and I'm just going through the stats, right? Where he's rushed for 0, 5, 5, 10, -8, -6, -7, 15. But he's had the big games, where he's rushed 7 for 83, 11 for 91 in the championship. I mean, on the biggest stage, let me finish with this. Biggest stage, Eric Phoenix has showed up. At Albany State, showed up. 22 of 28, 78% passing, 253 in the air, 8 of 15 and a score on the ground. In the SIC championship game against Tuskegee, 19 of 29 passing, 65%, 313 in the air yards, 2 touchdowns, and then was 11 for 91 with a score. So big games, Eric Phoenix has showed up, and I guess what I was saying and what I wanted to make sure I said is that it's important for him to run and hit, but I don't think that's not what he has to do. For Benedict to have success, he doesn't have to run because they got enough in the backfield. But when it's time to, and if he has to, we know he can. But I don't think it's not one of those things that he has to do, or I think Coach Berry is going to be asking or looking for him to do. Go ahead with your point, Drew.
And that's what I was going to say. In the past, that has been an integral part of the offense with the design runs for Phoenix. Now, a lot of the times when Phoenix, it's more of him taking advantage of what the defense is giving him. Great coverage downfield. I've got a gap here in the middle. I'm going to take off and rush the ball versus going on the read option a lot of times and keeping the ball as the quarterback on the read option. That's the big difference this year. He's not putting himself in harm's way by consistently rushing the ball as he has in the past. He's relied more on his arm also.
What's another key stat or a key area that you're looking at for Benedict? Speak about them maybe on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Benedict, again, they're a top 5 defense as well. What do you project and see from Benedict on that side of the ball?
All right, here we go. I'm just going to list those top defensive categories that Benedict ranks in. Benedict's defense ranks. All right. They are first in passing yards allowed in the nation, 126.3 passing yards allowed. Second in fourth down conversions allowed, only allowing 13.6 fourth downs. Fourth in third down conversions allowed, 0.248. So what that is telling you, if you're going against Benedict, you better go big play and get it on first or second down, because third and fourth downs are their buddy downs. They are fifth in both yards allowed per game, 236.9, and points allowed per game at 12 points per game. Other defensive categories, sixth in defensive touchdowns scored with 4. First downs allowed, 138. Eighth in fumbles recovered, 13. And 10th in tackles for loss at 8.4. And they sit number just outside the top 10 at 12 in sacks at 3.36 per game, and 13th in score. And the offense, though, here's the big difference. The offense is 13th in the nation, scoring 37.2 points per game. This may be the difference, Brian. Oh, and on special teams, 10th in block punts. They blocked 3 punts this season. The Benedict Tiger offense has scored 35 or more points in 7 of 11 games. Wingate's offense has scored 35 or more points only once. Defensively, Benedict has given up 14 or fewer points in 7 of 11 games, including 2 shutouts. And I said this earlier. Wingate has given up 14 or fewer points in 8 of 12, including 1 shutout. So essentially, defensively, these two teams are the same as far as output allowed. It's offensively where Benedict has a distinct advantage over Wingate. And I think those receivers that you're talking about may be the difference to go along with that running game.
What kind of outcome? I feel like there's a number here where first team to reach, because I definitely think Benedict's offense versus Wingate's defense. Now let's be real here. Wingate just got a win against Virginia Union, who had an offense that was averaging over 40 a game, or somewhere close to 39. So they've already faced a high-powered offense. So they're coming into this game at another road game against another good offense, and they got to be feeling good for themselves, feeling good about themselves going into this matchup. And I think the biggest key is Benedict cannot turn the ball over. That was the kiss of death for Virginia Union.
Especially deep in your own territory.
Exactly. Don't give the other team points, because I think Wingate's offense will have a tougher time against Benedict's defense. So who's going to wear whom out is the question. That's where Benedict has the advantage, as long as they don't turn the ball over. What's the number, Drew? First team to what wins this game? Void of turnovers. If everything plays even, void of turnovers, do you feel like there's a number that somebody's offense has to get to in order for them to secure a win?
I'm thinking 20 to 24 points. Somewhat, it's going to be somewhere in that range where somebody's going to need to get to. And here's the thing: Benedict has got to stay out of and long situations.
Sure.
What do I mean by that? Second and long, third and long situations. That's what Benedict. Excuse me. That's what happened to Virginia Union. They were forced into a lot of and long situations, and that allowed that Wingate defense to tee off, bring the extra pass rusher. They were able to get good coverage in the secondary, and that's what led to those pick sixes. And Union, despite having the nation's number one rusher, was not able to establish their running game as they were able to key on Jada Byers. Well,
Byers still got 119 yards rushing, though. I mean, individually, Byers.
But if you go back and look at it, that was all second half, Brian. That was a lot of that was second half because I believe he was under 30 yards going into halftime.
Okay.
So that's the key. But it's much easier for any team to key off on a particular running back versus a plethora of running backs such as Benedict has. As you know, they have Noah Zaire Scotland, who has 572 yards on the season. DeAndre Duhart with 517 yards on the season. You've got Eric Phoenix, the quarterback. He's 219 yards. And you even got Devon Smith, who has thrown in 174 yards on the season. Two of those people in the game at the same time, that may bring problems for Wingate. They may not know who to key on. And that may be what the difference is between what you saw last week with Union and what you may see, which I hope that you see this Saturday.
All right. Real quick before I ask you predictions, as I'm just glancing through on Massey ratings just to kind of look and see who they have their numbers for. Interesting weekend in the Division II playoffs, as you have two matchups in other regions involving top 5 teams, according to Massey. You've got Grand Valley State, who is actually ranked number 1 in the D2 football poll, going up against Northwest Missouri, who that's a 2 versus 3. D2 actually has Northwest Missouri rated 10. So, however you want to look at it, as a top 5 matchup or a top 10 matchup. But then you also have Pittsburgh State versus Ferris State. Now that's a 1 versus 4, according to Massey. D2 football kind of has that as a 4 versus 5 kind of matchup. And then you've got the West Florida Delta State on the other side of the region from Benedict. So whoever comes out of this contest, Benedict comes out of this contest, they're facing either West Florida or Delta State. Fortunately, it'll be at home.
Another top 5 matchup.
Another top 5 matchup. It should be at home. Yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll talk about that should Benedict win. But this matchup, Massey actually rates in favor of Wingate by 4 points, 21-17. So a 3.5 line, total points of 39.5. Drew, how do you see this going? What's your prediction and final score?
I think the over under is about right. I think it is going to be around 39, 40 points. I think I would slightly go with the over. But one thing I have seen with this Benedict team, they can win a slugfest, as we saw them win with Kentucky State and Albany State, and they can win a shootout, like we saw with Tuskegee and Fort Valley State. So they can win in any type of way, and I think that's going to be to their advantage. So once they everybody has a plan, Brian, until they get hit in the mouth. That's that old Mike Tyson, right? Everybody has a plan until they
What's
get
your
hit
score?
in the face.
Come on now. Come on. You wrote the article.
23-16, Benedict.
23-16, Benedict.
That's right at that 39. That's right at that 39.
Okay. All right. I won't give any kind of predictions as I'm doing the broadcast along with Jamie Walker and Anthony Robertson. 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central, right on the Black College Sports Network and HBCU League Pass Plus. That's how you can watch the game live from Columbia, South Carolina. Benedict versus Wingate. We're looking forward to bringing that game to you. Let's take a short break, another quick 2 minutes. Come back. Let's talk about the Bayou and some other SWAC news, some guys doing the damn thing on Thanksgiving Day from the SWAC. We'll talk about those guys and more. You're watching the BCSN SportsWrap. Be right back.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Time to call a credit repair company to fix my credit.
Hold the phone, man. You can do it yourself with Credit Versio.
That's way too hard. Call the credit repair company. Most credit repair companies only work on 1 or 2 accounts at a time, making it slow and expensive. You won't figure that out for months. Ignore him. Credit Versio's brilliant software scans all 3 credit bureaus, finds the accounts that are hurting your score, and guides you through the entire process. Anyone can do it. Let's fast forward and see the results.
Wow, I fixed my own credit and saved hundreds.
You can do this. Visit creditversio.com.
Follow the Black College Sports Network on social media at MyBCSN1, the number 1, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at MyBCSN1. All right, final segment here on the BCSN Sports Wrap. I'm Bryan, that's AD here. Just decided to drop in on a Friday afternoon, a Black Friday, drop a live show as we're previewing the Benedict College playoff game. But also tomorrow, we've got the Bayou Classic, and it means something. Don't they always mean something, is what they say. It always means something to somebody, somewhere. But this one has ramifications across the entire SWAC. Before we get to that, Drew, big news for a SWAC player in the Turkey Day NFL games yesterday.
Yeah, James Houston on the day yesterday, he had got his first 2 career sacks in his first game. I do believe he is the first Detroit Lion to ever get a sack in his first game with the Lions. I think I read that somewhere. Had 2 tackles for loss, and Brian, he even recovered a fumble on special teams. So great way to start off your NFL career, 6th-round draft choice. And yes, y'all, he is SWAC. He graduated from Jackson State University. Despite sometimes them referring to his days at UF, that's University of Florida. But yes, he he finished his career at Jackson State. I don't know if he actually graduated or not, but we're going to say he finished his career at Jackson State University.
Two things I read on Twitter. I know Stephen Gaither had said that he was just called up from the practice squad from I think from Wednesday. Yeah, I think that was a tweet I read from Stephen Gaither. And then I guess there was some. Well, you mentioned the UF thing, but was there some things mentioned about him being from Florida versus Jackson State? Is that what was going on during the broadcast?
I heard something. I heard something about that. Somebody mentioned that he was from the University of Florida at some point in time. I did not catch it on the broadcast, but I was not fully engaged in the broadcast as I was doing some cooking and some other things going on. And let's keep something else in mind. This was the first draft pick of the Coach Prime era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was doing a little bit of sweating watching Buffalo lay an egg, and for those who needed some double-digit points by Buffalo, man, I swear to God, didn't get it. But thankfully, I made up for it in the afternoon and evening. So, all right, so here we go. Bayou Classic, Grambling, Southern. What's on the line this year? The amazing,
just another SWAC West title.
Just another SWAC West title on the line as Southern can win the SWAC West with a win. Should they lose and Grambling win, that means Prairie View A&M will have backdoored their way into a SWAC West title, and they will go to the SWAC championship game to take on Jackson State. So this
Brian,
is the – yeah.
David Garner said Tony Romo was the one who referenced UF.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
That was probably a dig at his guy. That was intentional. That was intentional. I have no doubt that was intentional. There's not a lot of love there between Romo and Coach Prime. So don't think for a second that was not intentional. So Grambling State and Southern meeting for the 74th time overall, the 49th time in the quote-unquote Bayou Classic, as it's been coined. It's an even 24-24 record over the course of the last 48 times these teams have played in this quote-unquote Bayou Classic. What's interesting, last year, if you remember, Grambling won that contest with an interim coach. They had just
interim coaches on both sides.
Yeah, but they had just released Broderick Fobbs going into the bye week. And there was already talk that he was going to be out the door. So instead of letting him finish the season, they let him go early. They ended up winning the contest on the heels of some good field goal kicking by their kicker, Garrett Urban, who I think is still there on the roster. The year before, it came down to a Southern. That was a chance where Grambling was the team that was coming in hot, and I believe Southern blocked a pair of field goals. If my memory's trying to, and this would hold on. Let me backtrack. This is not the COVID. This is not the COVID.
Right.
I don't know what that was.
Bring it up.
I don't know what that was.
That was the one. That was the one everybody got cleared the day before the game.
Yeah, are people even counting that game? Do people even count that into the 48-year, 49-year history? Because that
it was played.
That game was ugly. But anyway, I'm thinking about the 19. Yeah, that one deserves an asterisk. I'm talking about the 2019 game, the game in New Orleans, which is now, I believe it's called the stadium is the Caesars Superdome now. But back then, I think it was the Mercedes Dome, Mercedes-Benz Dome, whatever, some Mercedes-Benz stuff. Yeah. So question is, will field goal kicking come into play in this contest? Because the last two played in New Orleans have come to been decided that way. It's a 1 p.m. Central Time kickoff, so that's 2 p.m. Eastern. It will be on NBC Sports and Peacock streaming service. So I believe on linear TV, that's NBC Sports that will be broadcasting it. So on your linear, and then if you're streaming it, you can stream it on Peacock. So that'll be there as well. Southern's looking to capture the Bayou for the fourth time in 5 years. Grambling is seeking back-to-back Bayou wins for the first time since they won 3 straight in 2015, 16, and 17. Of course, we know the ramifications. Southern win. They win the West. Grambling has a chance to finish right about on par with many people's projections of them. They were chosen 4th in the SWAC, and I think with the win, they could. But Drew, what's your thought on? Oh, and I don't want to bury the lead here, Drew, because what's also I think interesting about this Bayou for Dooley, for Eric Dooley, head coach of Southern. Here's a man who played for Grambling in this game, then coached for I think 14 something years at Southern with Pete Richardson. Then he was the OC, I believe, with Grambling for 4 years with the Fobbs era. Now he's the head coach at Southern. So if there's anybody who's more Bayou, more SWAC about this than anybody, it's Eric Dooley. What's your take on this game, Drew?
Well, you mentioned field goals earlier. Let's just go ahead and get the 2 kickers out the way. Joshua Griffin is the primary kicker for Southern, and he is 5 of 8 on the season. As a team, they are 7 of 12 on the season, with Luke Jackson being 2 of 4. And for Griffin, he is 2 of 3 from less than 30, 1 of 1 from 30 to 40, and 2 of 4 from 40 to 49, with a long of 42 for the season. So we just know that field goal kicking has played a big role in this particular game. And Garrett Urban, who you mentioned earlier, is 5 of 10 on the season. He's 1 of 1 from inside the 20. He's 3 of 6 from 30 to 40. He's 1 of 3 from 40 to 49, with a long of 41 on the season. So just go ahead and put that out there in case it does come down to a field goal. Looks like you've got advantage Southern this year if it comes down to a field goal. But we know when it comes down to the money ball, we know Urban did it last year. Now, it's interesting for Dooley. He has been on the side of this, and I would really love to see what his personal record is in the Bayou. But overall as a player and a coach.
As a coach. Gotcha.
Because since he's been on both sides of this, is he more times on the winning side? Is he more times on the loser side, or is he about half and half? Since the series is 24-24 overall, I'm just something curious to take a look at. But we'd have to go back and look at each of the years that he was at those different institutions. So if there's anybody who understands what it takes to be in that Bayou, it is Dooley. Now, let's look at the coach on the other side. Look at Coach Hugh Jackson, who, although this may be his first Bayou Classic, this is not his first big game as he comes in with this NFL experience. So, which one is going to be the deciding factor? The experience in the Bayou or the just big game experience that Hugh Jackson
has? Individually for Southern, obviously, I think everything starts with Bashawn McCray. Leads the team in net rushing yards at 549 net rushing yards. Southern actually has 3 backs over 400 yards. And then McCray, in terms of passing, has thrown this season for 1,544 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So there's, that's who the focus will be from the Southern side. For Grambling, though, Grambling has played 4 quarterbacks this season. Julian Calvez, the freshman, I believe from well, he's a true freshman. Yeah, he's definitely from my neck of the woods in Orlando. He has been the starter of late, and many people think he'll be the projected starter, but you don't know. We'll have to wait till game time to see what happens. But yeah, I mean, last week's loss was a disappointing loss for Grambling because they had just beaten Alcorn State, they had just beaten Arkansas Pine Bluff, they had played they had two very close losses the 2 weeks before against A&M and both A&Ms, Florida and Alabama, and then they just laid a 41-7 egg against Texas Southern. So I got to believe, you kind of take that game with a grain of salt, Drew, and really say that, Grambling's coming in playing pretty good football over 4 of the last 5 games, with the Texas Southern game excluded from that. And, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I definitely think it will come down to, Massey has this game rated at about a 28-21 game. So a touchdown, 7.5 points. If you were that kind of person, if you saw 7.5, I would tell you to take the points with Grambling, because anything can happen. This could come down to a field goal game, as we've already talked about, as the last, well, with the exception of the game in Shreveport, the last 2 in New Orleans have come down to field goals. So I would definitely lean Grambling and the points in this kind of situation. And if Southern wins this game, they'll be moving on to the following week for a rematch against Jackson State. What's your prediction? So my prediction, Drew, I'm going Southern with the win, Grambling with the cover. How do you see this one going?
Look, it's going to come down for Grambling. Can they make Southern uncomfortable some way, somehow? Because when Southern gets uncomfortable, we've seen some interesting play calls by Southern. Neither one of these teams have had any consistency on offense this year, Brian. Neither one of these teams. So that's going to be whose offense is going to show up. Now, we know Grambling's defense has not been statistically that good. But the reason that the defense has not been good is because their offense has been inept a lot of games. For Grambling, it's going to come down to one person, Maurice Washington. If Maurice Washington can go for a bill in this game, Grambling will have a good chance to win, because that means they will be controlling the clock and keep that defense off of the field. We know Dooley, he likes to throw the ball a lot, even though it's interesting, Brian, when you look at the statistics. We know Dooley is known for his passing game, right? Do you realize for the season, Southern has rushes the ball for 206 yards per game, and they pass the ball for 206 yards per game?
I'd call that pretty balanced.
I call that pretty balanced. It's like decimal point difference between the two. Rushing is 206.8, and passing is 206.2. So you're talking a yard or two over the season. But I found that, matter of fact, there's a 6-yard difference between rushing yards and passing yards for the season. But for some reason, it seems like a big game, Dooley likes to show off his offensive genius and wants to pass ball and run trick plays and different things like that. I think ultimately that may be what does Southern in. And we talk about the ultimate backdoor scenario where all 4 teams that we were looking at last week have lost. and Prairie backdoors their way into the SWAC championship game. So we will officially have the mess in the West if Prairie backdoors they went into the championship game with the 5-3 record on the season. That I called back in August, back in July, actually, that I wanted to make sure I remind everybody about that. So, but I've got Grambling. I've got Grambling by less than the score, but I've got Grambling by 4 points in this particular ball game.
Grambling by less than 4. All right. It'll be interesting. Hey, I think that somebody's going into the off season feeling really good. Because I like I said, I mean the momentum that Grambling will have going into next year will really look good when you break down the second half of their season if they finish it with a win in the Bayou.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
Edward Moore says, and he's just speculating on this, but Dooley was 3-1 as a player, and he thinks he was undefeated as both Pete Richardson's assistant and Fobbs' assistant in the Bayou Classic.
I don't know if he could. I don't think he could technically be undefeated though in that era because if I'm not mistaken, I just looked at a stat that said, let me see. All right. Well, you know what? That was the one thing that I didn't do any research on, so I'm not even gonna. I don't know what time.
We'll come back with that answer on Sunday. So,
but hold on. But see, here's why I say you can't. He couldn't have gone undefeated in Southern because he was there as an assistant for like 14 years. I know they didn't win all 14 years that Pete Richardson was the head coach. I mean, hell, I just watched a replay of the 2005 SWAC, or no, the Bayou that was in Houston. The year they moved it because of the hurricane.
Hurricane,
yes. And Bruce Eugene and Grambling ended up winning that game like 50-35. Yeah, 50-35. That was a Grambling team that they won the SWAC championship. Their only loss was a regular season contest against an FBS school, but they beat everybody else that they played. So, yeah, I'm sure it'll come up. It'll be a stat that I'm sure the great crew of NBC will call, and of course, Lewis Johnson will be there as well as some other folks. So that'll be interesting to see. All right, Drew. Well, that's going to do it for this live edition that we wanted to bring you. Again, want to encourage you to check out the Carlos Brown show tomorrow. Carlos's show, we'll have to get the exact time of the show. Now, his show normally is a noon Eastern to a noon to 2 Eastern, 11 to 1. I don't know. Maybe it still will be. Just you'll have to check at the Carlos Brown show, or make sure to check out Carlos Brown show on Facebook. We'll also send out an update later today with what time his show. Great perspective. I know I saw Carlos is on his way to New Orleans. So we'll get some great perspective on that contest. And then, of course, the Saturday afternoon broadcast of the Benedict Wingate game will be 1 p.m. on the BCSN and HBCU League Pass Plus. And then wake up Sunday morning with Dr. Cavill and his team and the team, the lab professors, as they break down not only the Benedict game, but the Bayou Classic and some other things over the holiday break. As that show is in the morning. I believe it is it 11 Eastern, 10 Central?
10 Eastern, 9 Central.
Okay, 10 Eastern, 9 Central. Okay. And then we'll have to see about me and Drew on Sunday night. I know I'll be figuring out what time I get on the road Sunday from Atlanta, heading back to Orlando. So if I'm able to get back in time, be looking out for a SportsWrap Sunday night from us. Worst case, we may do it Monday. Just telling you that now. So, okay. Make sure you're following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Crossover season, Brian. Crossover season. I'll be at the Miles Clark Atlanta basketball game on Saturday. Also, big women that'll be getting at 2:00 Eastern. Right here on the BCSN family of podcasts and networks.
Okay, yeah. So make sure to download the app.
And HBCU League Pass Plus.
Yeah, download that Jericho Broadcast Network's app, MyJBN, MyBCSN, on the Google Play and Apple App Store. That's where you can watch all of these contests, yes, as well as HBCU League Pass Plus. And then for all the information, updates, and schedules, make sure you're following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at MyBCSN1, the number one. Go download the BCSN Pod Zone. If you are a podcast person or a podcaster like I am, you enjoy listening to our shows in audio format while you're on the go or in the car, you can do that. Just go Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, rather, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of those great places where you listen and download podcasts. That's where you can get BCSN Pod Zone. Thanks to everybody who tuned in for this short SportsWrap edition on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching us at. We thank you for your time. Make sure to eat some leftovers. It's a good leftover eating day. And so eat some good leftovers. Go do a little bit of shopping. Watch some college football, basketball, whatever you're going to do. And support the HBCUs that are still playing. That's going to do it. For AD Drew, I'm Brian Fulford. Peace out. Be safe, everybody.
Holla.
But earmuff, you stay on hard.